Hello and welcome to my channel. Thanks for joining with me. I like to teach about ancient, especially ancient spirituality and spiritual thought, the beginnings and tracing the progress of various religions. And if you're interested in those subjects, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. Please leave your comments and questions. I try to answer them. Today, I'm talking about Zoroastrianism, and I want to make it clear right from the beginning that this is just an introduction. There's no way in a short video like this that I could possibly cover everything about any of these religions or groups. All of the ones I have discussed so far, I'll be going back and doing additional videos and talking about more of the things that they believed and did. Now, Zoroastrian was founded by the priest Zarathustra. He was a Persian priest turned prophet, and he founded Zoroastrianism. It's sometimes called Mazda Yasna, which means devotion to Mazda. And the agreed upon years of the beginnings of the religion are between 1500 and 1000 BCE. This is one of the longest standing and oldest religions known in the world. It could be as much as 3,500 years old. Zoroaster is the Greek rendition of the name Zarathustra. Now, he was a priest originally in the early Iranian religion, and he received a vision from Ahura Mazda, the god. And in this vision, he was told to proclaim the existence of only one true God, Ahura Mazda, which means the Lord of Wisdom. In the ancient Iranian religion, many gods were worshipped, and the Lord of Wisdom was just one of those. So he received additional messages over time from this God, and these messages came in answer to different questions that he and others had, and he would repeat the answer to his disciples. And these were memorized by the prophet himself and by his followers, and they became a living scripture that was passed down from generation to generation in the ancient language known as Avestan. After a rather slow beginning, Zoroastrianism grew rapidly. It spread throughout Iran and became the majority religion of the Persian Empire. It existed and continued in that region until 651 CE, when the Muslim Arabs invaded the territory and toppled the empire. At that time, they made it difficult for others to practice their religion. They destroyed Zoroastrian shrines, temples, and libraries, burning scores of Persian works in an effort to subjugate the people and impose Islam upon the people. Now, at that time and following, a number of Zoroastrians fled the area and ended up in northern India. Some remained in Iran. In today's world, the majority of Zoroastrians are in India, and they are called Parsis. And the second largest group is in Iran today, And the third largest group is in the United States, especially in the area of California. And there are scattered groups of Zoroastrians in the UK and in other areas around the world. According to tradition, Zarathustra died when he was about 77 years old. There are two stories, one that he died of natural causes and old age, but the other is that he was murdered, assassinated by a priest in retaliation for dismantling the old religion of Iran. Well, the new faith that he established drew on the old, but had a number of significant differences. And it was based primarily on 5 principles. The first was that there is only one God who reigns supreme, and that is Ahura Mazda. And this God is all good. He has, however, an opponent named Angra Mainyu, who is all evil, who later is evil is personified into something like the Christian Satan or devil. Now, goodness that permeates the person and the world of the Zoroastrian is made apparent by these 3 things. And this is what you will hear from all people practicing the faith. This is the central doctrine of the faith: good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. And each individual, this is also very important, has free will to choose between good and evil. Zarathustra believed that the good God had an idea or an ideal existence. It was in the thought or in the mind of this God. This God pictured this ideal existence. It was one of harmony and goodness and I guess you could say a fairness. There was not one thing that could happen to the detriment of another thing. It was in complete balance. And this ideal world became manifested as the physical universe, the material universe that we see. But within this material universe, there is a degradation and decay, and there is a drawing toward the potentiality of evil and destruction. And so the Zoroastrian believer is taught that when they are born, they have a good mind. The good mind, which is able to recognize this ideal of balance and goodness. And that when a person sees something that is unfair, that is out of balance, is perhaps discriminatory or harmful to an individual or a group, they have the ability to recognize this. They can see this lack of harmony. And then it is their responsibility, their individual responsibility to think this through. This is a religion very much for the individual responsibility to think things through, to determine what is right and what is wrong, to even attempt to find a way to rectify wrong and then to act upon it. And that is the good thoughts, the good words, and the good deeds. And at the highest level, the person should do this because it is right and because it is right for the common good, not because of any kind of personal gain. When a person is placing the common good above their own selfish desires in an effort to maintain the divine order of the universe, then they are on the side of good. Now, these ideas, these central precepts of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds can be practiced in a number of practical ways. One is telling the truth at all times, and especially keeping promises that you've made. So tell the truth about what you're going to do and keep promises. Then practice charity to all people, but especially those who are less fortunate than you. So charity is a way of expressing the goodness of this spiritual kingdom, so to speak, in our material world. Showing love for other people, even if they don't return that love, even if they don't reciprocate. And finally, practicing moderation in all things, especially in one's diet. In the cosmic worlds of the Zoroastrian religion, the entire universe is orderly and in balance. And when things happen that cause destruction in the universe, these are the way that we understand things are not as they should be. And we're working toward not just individual balance in our own life and in the things we see around us, but by doing that, we're working toward maintaining cosmic order. And that's sometimes called the divine order. When a person is born, there are two essences to that person's soul, and they're divided at birth. And one is what we might call the higher spirit, and the other is the individual soul. And we see this in a lot of the other faiths or philosophies that we've talked about, that there is a universal soul, a unity that is part of all people and helps to direct us, the individual, in our lifetime, in the individual soul. And so this higher spirit is there to help us as we go through life to make those good decisions, because those decisions actually determine our final destiny. Now, 3 days after a person dies, the soul is reunited with the spirit, and together they travel to a bridge. This is the bridge that spans the abyss between the world of the living and the world of the dead. And when a person dies, a record has been kept of those good things that they have done, and also the things that tended toward evil. Either they had purposefully done evil things, or they had failed to do good things when there was opportunity, or they had inadvertently done evil things. And so they come to this bridge, and there they will encounter a holy maiden. And if a person's good outweighs the bad, they will see this holy maiden as a young and beautiful maiden. And she represents the conscience of the deceased person. If the person's bad deeds and their actions, thoughts, and words outweigh the good, the mythology is that they will see the maiden as an old hag. Well, the soul crosses the bridge, and for the good person destined to bliss, the bridge widens and welcomes the soul, and it's an easy passage. But for the person who has done evil, the bridge narrows and becomes quite precarious until eventually they fall off the bridge. But it is the person's own choices based on their freedom of choice in life that has determined the final position of this person after death. The person who goes on to what I was calling bliss has entered into the highest consciousness, a level of high consciousness. And the person who has done evil has entered into the lowest, the level of the lowest consciousness. It's not as though there are two areas or two rooms that they're entering. These are states of consciousness. And the good or bad behavior in one's life was not so much a reward or a punishment as it was the natural outcome of their choices in life. If you behaved virtuously, this was a reflection of your faith in an all good and all powerful God who cared for humans and specifically had an interest in our moral and ethical choices. Individual choice was what defined a person's life. This was very different than the tribal atmosphere that had previously reigned in the polytheistic religion of the Persian Empire. In a tribal society, the tribe makes the decisions, and the tribe rules the family, and the family rules the individual, and you are basically just doing what you're told. In this religion, there is perhaps our first truly monotheistic faith, one God, and the idea of individual choice being paramount is so important that we are held accountable for our own decisions. But that means that we have the responsibility of making those decisions and discerning what is right and good and following that path. The story is told of a priest, a Zoroastrian priest, who was once asked why people do bad things. If we are born with a clear, higher mind that allows us to see what is good and what is out of harmony, he said it's because our thoughts are clouded. Our vision becomes clouded. And so, one of the things that the practitioner of the Zoroastrian faith attempts to do is to clear their vision to see truth. And by truth, they don't just mean, is this factually right or wrong? Is this a true as compared to a false statement? But is it in line with the idea of the balanced and ultimately harmonious and good cosmic world that is the ideal? One could show their choice of following this lifestyle by adapting a clear set of core values. And that would be to make friends with all people, to find unity with all people, even your enemies, to change wickedness in this world to righteousness, and finally, to help those who are ignorant of the truth to learn the truth. Now, that does not mean that Zoroastrians are evangelical. The Parsis in India tend to not attempt to attract converts. They, the way that you are part of the faith there is to be born into that faith. And they discourage people from marrying outside of the faith, especially women should marry a man within the faith. If a child is born from a mixed marriage, they are usually considered part of the religion as long as their father is a Zoroastrian man. Like other religions, there are rituals, there are ceremonies, there are specific texts that are used because eventually they were written down. Their teachings were written down, and there are practices for caring for the dead. And we're going to go into some more of those in a bit more detail in a future video. So I hope you'll join me then, because they have some very interesting ways of doing things. So if you've liked this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, please leave them in the box below. As always, I invite you to join with me next time as we take another look at ancient spirituality.